Imagine this. 5 cousins, full of life, laughter, and excitement, vanish without a trace after a reunion at their family's farm. It was 1994, and the cousins, aged between 8 and 16, had spent the weekend together, basking in the simplicity of rural life. They roamed the vast fields, played games of tag, and spent hours by the creek, enjoying the beauty of the countryside. The reunion was supposed to be one of those joyful moments where families reconnect and make memories. But by Sunday afternoon, the scene turned into something out of a nightmare. The cousins, who had been inseparable all weekend, were nowhere to be found. Their families searched the farm frantically. They checked the house, the barn, and the surrounding woods. The creek where the children had spent most of their time was searched thoroughly, but there was no sign of the cousins. It was as though they had vanished into thin air. There was no evidence to explain their disappearance. No one saw them leave, and no one could figure out why they were gone. The local police were called, but even they could find no clues. The community was left in shock and disbelief as the once happy reunion turned into an unsolved mystery. As the days turned into weeks, then months, the case went cold. Investigators followed every possible lead, but with no witnesses and no tangible evidence, the trail eventually ran dry. The families, devastated by the loss, were left with nothing but unanswered questions. The case soon faded from the headlines, becoming just another cold missing person mystery that seemed to have no resolution. Yet, fate had other plans. Nearly 29 years later, something unimaginable would unfold. Nature itself would finally reveal the truth that had been hidden all this time. The farm, where the reunion had taken place, was a peaceful, remote property nestled far from the hustle and bustle of city life. The sprawling fields, dense woods, and the quiet creek that ran through the property had always been the perfect setting for family gatherings. For generations, this farm had been a place where memories were made, passed down, and cherished. On that fateful weekend in 1994, the 5 cousins, ranging in age from 8 to 16, were no different from any other group of kids. They spent their days exploring the vast land, playing games in the fields, and swimming in the creek that had been a staple of their childhood adventures. The reunion was filled with laughter and joy, with no signs of trouble on the horizon. It was supposed to be the perfect family gathering, full of love and connection. But as the sun began to set on that warm Sunday evening, things took an eerie turn. The last time anyone saw the cousins, they were near the creek, laughing and playing together. As the evening grew darker, they were expected to return to the house. But as time passed, they never came back. It was then that the panic set in. The family immediately began searching the property, calling their names, but there was no sign of the children. The creek had swollen slightly due to the recent rains, but there was no indication of a struggle or any obvious signs of an accident. It was as though the children had simply vanished into thin air. The authorities were contacted, and a massive search operation ensued. Search dogs, helicopters, and even volunteers combed the property and surrounding area for days. But despite the extensive search, there was nothing. No footprints, no traces of their clothing, and no hint of where the children might have gone. It was as if the earth itself had swallowed them whole. Had they wandered off, or had something far darker occurred? The case quickly became a chilling mystery, one that no one could explain. As the years passed, the mystery of the 5 missing cousins remained unsolved, and the pain of their disappearance lingered in the hearts of their families. Investigators explored every possible theory, but none seemed to bring any closer to the truth. Some suggested that the cousins might have run away, though there was no evidence to support this. Their families were well connected, and there was no history of conflict that would have driven them to flee. Others speculated that the children might have gotten lost in the woods. After all, the farm was vast, and the surrounding forest could easily be disorienting for young children. However, even after multiple searches, no sign of them was found in the woods. The search efforts were exhaustive. Teams combed every inch of the land, checking nearby streams, the creek, and even the dense underbrush. They used dogs, drones, and helicopters, all to no avail. Even the creek, which was initially suspected to have swallowed them in the rising water, had been searched repeatedly, but there were no signs of the children's presence. The investigation hit a dead end, and the case slowly grew cold. Over the years, the families grew more resigned to the fact that they might never know what happened to their loved ones. The community, too, began to lose hope as the case slipped further into obscurity. But the mystery wasn't over. In an unexpected twist of fate, Something would happen that no one could have predicted. A flood would bring the answers that had eluded investigators for nearly 3 decades. It was as if nature itself had been holding the truth beneath the surface all these years, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. Fast forward to 2023. The farm, now owned by the same family who had witnessed the cousin's disappearance nearly 3 decades ago, had changed little over the years. The sprawling land remained mostly untouched, preserving its rustic charm. However, one feature had always been a concern during the rainy season: the creek. Despite being a beautiful natural landmark, the creek had the potential to flood after heavy rainfall, causing havoc in the surrounding areas. This year, in early spring, the region was hit by an intense storm, and the rainfall was far heavier than anyone had anticipated. The creek swelled beyond its banks, and soon the surrounding land became submerged in floodwaters. The family, concerned for their safety, was forced to evacuate the area, leaving behind their property as the storm raged on. Little did they know that the floodwaters would soon uncover a long-buried secret. As the waters began to recede, the workers who had come to help clear the debris around the creek noticed something unusual. Beneath the layers of mud, dirt, and debris, they discovered remnants of items that were immediately recognized as belonging to the missing cousins. There were clothes, shoes, and even a small, faded photograph, pieces of the past, hidden beneath the earth for decades. But it wasn't just the belongings that caught the workers' attention. They also uncovered what appeared to be a shallow grave, carefully hidden from view for years. The workers contacted the authorities immediately, and forensic experts were called in to investigate. As the layers of dirt were carefully removed, the horrifying truth began to unfold. The flood had unearthed more than just the past. It was revealing the answers to a mystery that had remained unsolved for nearly 30 years. The forensic team carefully examined the site where the remains had been uncovered, and as they continued to dig deeper, they made a heartbreaking discovery that would bring the mystery of the missing cousins to a tragic conclusion. Beneath the layers of dirt and debris, the bodies of the 5 cousins were found. Their remains were positioned in a shallow grave near the creek, suggesting that they had been carefully placed there. The bodies were remarkably intact, though the trauma they had endured was evident. It appeared that the cousins had been trapped by the rising waters of the creek during the storm, unable to escape the rapidly flooding land. The floodwaters had claimed their lives, and in the chaos of the storm, their bodies had been buried by shifting earth and debris. The investigation revealed that the flood, which had come unexpectedly, was the cause of their deaths. The children had likely sought refuge near the creek as the storm intensified, but the swelling waters overtook them, drowning them in the rising flood. The bodies had remained hidden for nearly 3 decades, with the evidence washed away by the very force that had taken their lives. It wasn't a case of foul play, kidnapping, or something sinister. It was a tragic accident that no one could have predicted. For the families of the cousins, the news was both devastating and relieving. After nearly 3 decades of uncertainty, they finally had answers. The reunion, which had once been a joyful occasion, had turned into a heartbreak. But now, the truth had come to light. The flood, in the end, had exposed the long unsolved mystery, allowing the families to mourn their lost loved ones, but with the knowledge that the truth had been uncovered, putting the case to rest.